Hello and welcome back to our election night news coverage. I am Ryan Henry, Ryan Henry wanted to bring you back. One more state has been called. Donald Trump has won Oklahoma. That is in addition to him winning Vermont, North Carolina, and Tennessee. But I'm going to send it over to Anthony Collins and Jorge Rivera. Will they be bringing down the previous Republican candidates who failed to object Donald Trump and, have dropped out of the race since we have started this election cycle? Take it away, guys.
Yeah, so to add on to that, as we've seen for Virginia, a lot more moderate Democratic voters have leaned towards Haley, whereas more extreme voters towards Trump. But when we look at the failed Republican candidates, starting off Ron DeSantis, who is named sword after dominating the midterms, winning a decisive 60% of the votes, elevating Florida from a swing state to a definitive red state. Vivek, who exploded in popularity during presidential campaign. When we look at the reason why Haley has survived for so long is by Haley smartly using her foreign affairs experience to uplift herself against Vivek, who had more lack of knowledge in foreign policy. Although Vivek does have a bright future ahead of him, sharing, smartly enough, he shared a lot of ideals with Trump. Ron DeSantis did not do a good job of that, as he, thought that his more extreme ideals would push past Trump voters, but as loyal Trump voters, did not bite on that, whereas Haley did a good job sticking with her policies, and she's done a good job in Vermont, as we see. She's won that.
Right, so Anthony, thank you. I want to also thank you just for starting off the great conversation. I'm looking forward to talking about another few of the Republican candidates who either have dropped out of the race or, like Nikki Haley, are still in it. And we're seeing now with the results of the primaries that it's going to be sort of an interesting few hours here as we analyze the results of the various primaries. We're looking at Vermont, where it's turning out to be a very close race. But before anything, I first wanted to talk a little bit about Nikki Haley. Why don't we start off with Nikki Haley, a little bit about her past. As we know, she was a governor of South Carolina from 2011 to 2017. Under the Trump administration, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations from 2017 to 2018. And then one talking point that the Trump side would like to bring up is the fact that she was a board member under Boeing. And so when we talk about the sort of hesitancy from the I would say the Trump voter base regarding Haley, they say that she is a warmonger, which is a term that Trump frequently uses to describe Nikki Haley. And one of the reasons for this term being used is the fact that she was a board member under Boeing, which of course is a aircraft manufacturer as well as missiles as well. But of course, what I want to ask Anthony is, where do Haley and Trump differ in terms of policy? I think this is a question that a lot of people have.
So from a foreign policy aspect, we see Haley much more for foreign aid with Ukraine and their war against Russia and with Israel, whereas Trump has taken more of an isolationist approach when it comes to both nations in war. Trump is more, same with immigration, as he's much more extreme on border control, as we've seen throughout his presidency, with the border wall, stricter deportation programs, although they both agree on reinstating the Remain in Mexico policy executed by Trump's administration. But, as a U.S. ambassador in Trump's cabinet, Haley, she really set herself apart with not only Trump, but the rest of the Republican candidates. But her support, as having more experience, she is more sympathetical towards other nations in war, whereas Trump hasn't talked about it much in terms of where Israel is right now. But he did say today that he hopes Israel ends the job that they're doing. So as he does support Israel, he doesn't seem that he wants America to have too much of an involved in the war at this point.
Exactly, and as you mentioned, isolationist policy, and I think he is taking the America First approach, as we've seen the same with Vivek Ramaswamy, who earlier dropped out of the race. And not to mention that in terms of Israel and just more general foreign policy like Ukraine, what we're seeing is Haley and Trump agreeing on aid to Israel and eliminating Hamas. And then in terms of Ukraine, that's where the two differ. I think Haley, what we've seen is that she continues to support aid, while Trump is more leaning towards peace talks and wanting to end the war as a whole. I also had another question, Anthony, if you want to go ahead and answer this one, is we're seeing a lot of the ideas of alternatives to Trump on the GOP side. Is there any possibility, in your opinion, that there could be an alternative to Trump?
No, I do not. As we've seen, we've seen moderate candidates try to take him down. We've seen more far right, as we've seen DeSantis. He's claimed that Trump does not go far enough on abortion. We've seen Vivek try to mimic a lot of his ideals, and he's failed to do so. So it doesn't seem like, as of right now, there is a candidate out there that could really beat Trump. I mean, Vivek, who exploded popularity, obviously, his loyalty towards the former president, he did a good job there. It more so looked like an approach to try to get that VP spot rather than truly beating him. So I don't see really, even Haley, we don't see. So, I don't think there's a candidate out there that could truly turn Trump voters as of right now to themselves.
I'm also on the same page as you, to be honest. And what I'm sort of seeing is there's a lot of support coming from the GOP, from former Trump allies and as well as current Trump allies, and a lot of endorsements, and a few of which I'd like to mention. Of course, some more obvious ones like Ben Carson, who was former Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Greg Abbott, governor of Texas, who was working on the border situation on Texas, which is more recent news. Doug Burgum, who is a former GOP candidate who was running against Trump more recently until he dropped out of the race, and also governor of North Dakota. Ron DeSantis again, another. Javier Milei, who has been in the media a lot as of late, president of Argentina. And then a few others that I would mention here, but I don't want to go on and on. But I do also want to say that as of now, what we're seeing is the party is almost deciding that it's going to be Trump as of now. And of course, it is a little early to call, as we are here Super Tuesday. We're seeing a lot of different opportunities. One in particular, as I mentioned earlier, is Vermont for Nikki Haley. It has not been called, but we're still looking at that very closely. But up until today, we've seen primaries. Let me list a few states here. Idaho, Nevada, North Dakota, Iowa, Missouri, Michigan, South Carolina, New Hampshire, and not a state, but still had a primary, the Virgin Islands, all who had decided it would be Trump. And so I agree with you, Anthony. What we're seeing here is a lot of support from the party in general, and it seems like the name that comes out at the end will be Trump. So the only thing I also wanted to add was I wanted to talk a bit about Ron DeSantis as well. We talked about Nikki Haley, but Ron DeSantis also seemed to be a big player early on in the race, I should say. So what I want to know really is, what did he accomplish in Florida? Why was he so popular? What was the big movement as he started his bid?
So obviously he elevated Florida. So when he came into Florida, everyone viewed Florida as mainly a swing state, and he turned into a definitive red state. And so everyone thought he had a lot of momentum coming out of Florida going into his presidential campaign. But he definitely revealed his inexperience in his first presidential campaign. He definitely underperformed in the Iowa caucus. His strategy of going after diehard Trump supporters, it ultimately failed. He believed his far-right policies would help him win Iowa, because a lot of the voters were far-right. But it did not work, as Trump did win by a significant margin. But I thought after dropping out of the race, him immediately endorsing Trump, you always know the former president has always expressed respect back when people endorsed him. And, DeSantis still holds a significant power in Florida, so he can shift policy towards his liking and use it for his next presidential campaign in the future.
Do you think that's where it might have gone wrong, where he's running against Donald Trump, who had a big movement to begin with? A lot of the applause that on the right, looking at DeSantis' handling of the COVID policies down in Florida during the pandemic.
Yes, I think DeSantis took a more, I'm going to be more extreme towards Trump's beliefs. He figured he'd draw his voters towards him by doing that, but, it didn't work. A lot of loyal voters, they really trusted Trump to get the job done. A lot of them thought, even though DeSantis, he was more extreme on abortion and other issues, they didn't really truly believe that he actually was, and he was just doing it for his campaign to get ahead of Trump. So, he wasn't able to draw Trump voters, and that ultimately led to him dropping out of the race.
Understood completely. And, of course, there are many other figures that we can talk about, but one name that comes up in particular, of course, is Vivek Ramaswamy. I know he was all over social media after the debates, the Republican primary debates. I believe hosted with a few different cable news networks as well as video streaming platform Rumble. But what we're seeing is very interesting because he was the youngest candidate. He was 38 years old. I'll give you a bit of a background on him. He is 38 years old, born in Ohio, an entrepreneur who founded drug development company Rovient Sciences. So my question, I suppose, is what was behind his rise?
Well, the thing with Vivek Ramaswamy is he believed he was leading a strong movement of young Republican voters that initially supported Trump prior to his sudden rise in his run for president. This obviously didn't last long for Vivek. He found himself losing multiple debates. He had a lot of popularity. It exploded going into it. Him throwing accusations merely towards Haley. Haley came back, exposed Vivek for his lack of knowledge in foreign policy. Vivek found himself kind of in a hole. But Vivek does have a bright future ahead of him. Seen as loyal in Trump's eyes, extremely popular with Republican voters. He obviously, as we could see, he hopes to serve in Trump's administration. He has a very strong chance of entering Trump's cabinet in one of those lower departments, being on the short list of VP.
That's another thing. He's looks to be at least in the name pool for vice president under Trump. And then I suppose one other thing is what exactly were some of his political positions? Because we know a lot about his personality based on how he conducted himself on camera, of course, but where did he really stand on the issues?
Like what I said, I thought he's more of an isolationist, just like Trump. His ideals are nearly identical, as they share fairly similar, not so much nationalistic, but more so, expressing his loyalty towards him. And it helped him in the short run, but in terms of really winning the election, I don't see that he had a true approach towards that.
And I just want to add on to that because isolationists, just like Trump, America first, as we've seen with Trump. But of course, there's a few other bullet points I would just like to add here that, according to Vivek, he wants to revive what he's calling a national identity that's missing in the country right now. He is agreeing with Trump on ending birthright citizenship. He's a Second Amendment absolutist. And then one interesting point that I made a note of, which is not a policy I've heard at all, actually, is that he's interested in shutting down the FBI and redistributing the funds, which seems to be a very interesting move, not something I've heard. And then, just like Trump, seeking peace in Ukraine. So the natural question that follows is, what is his future in politics now that he's dropped out of the race? Say if he does VP, but what comes in the 2028 election season? Potentially anything there?
Yeah, definitely. The name Vivek Ramaswamy, he is not going away for sure. He's got a real young Republican movement right now. He obviously exploded rapidly during the beginning of his campaign for president, so he is not going away. He's very young. Obviously he's very loyal for Trump, so I don't want to say that his upside is VP for Trump. He obviously has a strong movement. He's still very young. He has a potential, so his upside is a lot bigger than what it sounds like, what I'm saying. But I do predict that he was really going for VP. But we'll have to see what his political future holds. But
we'll have to see indeed. So I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add there. As we covered Vivek Ramaswamy, an interesting player in the field right now. Is there anything else there that you have, Anthony?
No, how about you, man?
All right, well, my name is Jorge Rivera, and that was Anthony Collins. Pleasure doing a segment, and we'll be covering RFK Jr. in the coming segments as well.
Peace.
Thank you, Anthony, and thank you, Jorge. I've been Ryan Henry. Wanted to make another announcement before we take a quick break. Maine has also been called in favor of Donald Trump. We are going to be taking a quick break. Coming up next, me and David and I will be back discussing Donald Trump's criminal trials and the impact it could potentially have on this election. You've been tuning to 89.5 FM at WSOU, the Marconi award-winning radio station. We're going to take a quick break, go play a little bit of music. We'll be right back talking Donald Trump criminal trials.